You guys ready for some Java ferns? What's up, guys? I'm Lucas, and welcome to Terracotta Aquarium. This is episode 2 of the Epiphyte only aquarium, and today we're going to be planting. So this is going to be a fun day, and I'm always excited when it gets time to do some planting. I'll talk a little bit more about the plants we're going to use as we get to them, but first I want to show you how the tank is doing. So as you can see, the tank is super cloudy, and I did this a little bit by design. I wanted to show you guys what can happen if you don't boil your wood beforehand or wash any of the sand. But I also want to show you that it's really not that big of a deal. So the reason that the water is like this is because I didn't boil any of this spiderwood and I didn't wash the sand. All of this cloudiness is a mix of dust from the sand and just tannins being released from the wood. And it's been like this for 2 days. I'm about to take all of the water down and then fill it up with fresh water. And this 2 days is basically me doing the soaking process just in the tank here. But I just wanted to show you guys that this can happen, and you shouldn't be alarmed if it does. So first things first, I'm going to turn off the filter, and now I'm going to start draining water out of the tank. So I've just got the siphon sort of wedged in here, and I've got a couple of buckets ready. It's currently draining just straight down into this one. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I'm going to use that time to clean this up a little bit. And then, while this is happening, we can talk about the plants. So here are the plants that I'm going to be working with. And one thing that I'm going to be doing throughout this whole process is I'm just going to keep spraying them down just to make sure that they stay nice and wet throughout this process, because we don't want any of them to get dried out while we're working. So the biggest plants we're working with are these Java ferns. And these are going to give most of the body to the aquarium. And these are beautiful. All of the plants that I'm using here were just delivered by bucephalandra, so buceplant.com. And these are both Java fern mother pots. And I think it was about $25 for each of these. And then next I've got this mini bolbitus. I wanted to get a bigger bolbitus, but this was what they had. I think it's still gonna work and it's gonna give a nice, interesting texture in between the Java ferns. So I've got 3 pots of this, and I think these were, if I remember right, about $12 a piece, something like that. And then I have 2 little pots of bucephalandra. This is a bucephalandra narrow leaf. So these are what we are going to start with. And I'll show you how we can get all of these out of pots and get them prepped and ready. So let's start with one of these Java ferns. So it's really easy. All you do is just loosen up the pot a little bit. I just kind of manipulate it in my fingers like this. And then you can kind of grab the plant around the base, and then the basket will slide right off. And this is rock wool. This is what the plants are grown in. They're usually grown immersed, meaning the top will be out of the water. And this just contains a whole lot of nutrients for them to use. But we don't want any of this in the water column because it'll lead to excess nutrients and potentially algae. So all you have to do is just kind of break this open. And with epiphytes like this, Java fern especially, they come out pretty easily. You can see the roots right there. So I'm just going to keep breaking this off, and I can kind of peel this out as we go. There's some of it. And peel off a little bit more. You might get some pieces like this that just have a little bit of rock wool attached, and it's easy to remove. And this stuff should just peel off pretty easily. If you get a little bit attached, it's not the end of the world. All right, so there we go. Our first mother pot completes. And you can see that it's actually quite a few plants in here. If you wanted, you could go in and like that's a plant, or this little bit is a plant. But you'll see as we go, but it's effective to put these in pretty sort of thicker bunches. They're more impactful that way. But we'll get to that as we start planting. For now, let's finish up with the rest of the pots. Okay, so here are all of the plants. You can see we ended up with a ton of Java fern from those 2 pots. So this is going to be perfect. It's all looking nice and healthy. And there's a ton of mini bolbitus as well. I was able to break it into about 7 of these little clumps. So that's perfect. And then this bucephalandra, it looks beautiful. The roots on it are a little bit iffy, but the leaves themselves are absolutely gorgeous. Can't wait to see how this looks under a better light. All right, the tank is draining slowly but surely. I think I'm gonna get in here with a little scooper and just speed the process along a little bit. And by scooper, I mean my trusty all-use coffee mug. So it just occurred to me that you may be watching this and not know what epiphytes are. So epiphytes are plants that can get all of their nutrients out of the water column. They don't need to be planted into the substrate. So in our case, that means for the Java ferns, for example, we can just place them on the hardscape itself, and they'll sit there and get all of those nutrients that they need without being in the substrate. So the Java ferns, the bucephalandra, and the bolbitus are all considered epiphytes. And epiphytes lend themselves really well to a beginner aquarium because they don't require a lot of maintenance. You can kind of just set them and forget them. Stem plants are beautiful and look really cool, but there is a lot of maintenance that goes along with trimming them, replanting them, propagating them. Epiphytes, you just let them go and they do their thing. Okay, so that is the water drains. And that is going to be good enough for our purposes. There's still a couple of inches, but that is totally fine because everything is going on the wood. And the rest of these tannins will come out over time just through water changes and that kind of thing. So it's really not a big deal. And we haven't seen any slime mold or anything like that growing on the wood yet, but I'm sure it will happen and I'll be sure to show it to you when it does. So when planting, especially with Java ferns, but in general, I like to start with the biggest plants and then work my way down to the smallest. So in this case, we're going to start with these Java ferns. And this is kind of a dual island aquascape. So I'm going to keep that in mind as we're working to bring more focus to sort of the center of each of these pieces of wood. So with Java fern, you can really just kind of wedge it in the gaps of the wood. And it'll just sort of stay that way as long as you get it nice and wedged in and secure. But the branches of the wood will just help to keep it in place. And over time, as the rhizome grows, it'll kind of lock in. Oh, it's always so exciting getting the first plants in to any aquarium because it really just makes the whole thing come to life. Now, this piece is going to be right in front of the filter outflow, which could look really cool, but might get blown around quite a bit. So I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm going to keep this one here for now and keep building out the rest, but nothing's set in stone here. Remember, you can always move this stuff around, you can change it. And it's easy enough to just pull straight back out of the wood. I'm going to go over to this other island now to balance the two as I work. I think I'm going to go kind of back and forth between the two. I'm making this piece just a little bit smaller because I want to see if I can wedge it in between this little gap here. Yeah, that wedges in pretty nicely. Don't forget, as you're working, to just keep spraying the plants down. I think I'm going to try to get this one a little bit lower. Just wedge it right into that gap. Oh yeah, that's looking nice. Moving back over to this side, there's a few good places. think I'm gonna try to avoid having too many places where it comes above the water line. Something like that could certainly work. I kind of like that. Gives it a nice little canopy, but because of that, we're going to need to put something here. I really do like how these kind of overhang. They give a really nice kind of canopy effect in this scale of aquarium. It locks in pretty nicely right there. And we can fill in with the bolbitus below. It's always good to take a step back as you're working to get a better look at the scale. And if you see any leaves that don't look quite right, you can always pluck these. This one's kind of on the verge, but I'm going to leave it. Taking a step back, I think I want to try to maintain more submerged growth. So I think I'm going to try to angle this one a little bit more towards the center. Could also maybe flip it over a little bit to get that big leaf staying a little bit lower. I think I'm going to have it a little bit pushed towards the back. So this is where we're at so far. I don't think it's done yet. I think I need to rearrange this a little bit, move some of it, I think potentially over here. Then again, that side might be good. And I think as I add the bolbitus, it's going to start coming together more. I'm just going to mess around a little bit more with this side and see if I can fill out the center a little bit more. And I think I want to move this kind of over a little bit, just so there's not a ton of flow getting blasted across the front of these java ferns. All right, I think that's looking pretty nice. They're like pretty well spread out across the whole thing. They're providing so much shade. It's going to be great. So now I'm going to go in and fill in all the little gaps with bolbitus. I'm just wedging it in between the ferns, just where it'll catch on the wood. And I'm just using the java fern that I've already planted just as a bit of a guide on where this stuff is going to look the best. So yeah, that one is just a little bit too big. And now the final touch, well, almost final touch. I'm going to add one more plant after this. I just decided. But the final touch for now, but this next plant is bucephalandra. And I'm going to use it in the same way as the bolbitus. Just trying to wedge it in a way that hides gaps, looks natural, fills out the texture. All right, I am pretty happy with this so far. And of course, when you're not gluing anything and you're just sticking stuff onto the hardscape like this, you do have to be prepared for the fact that some of it might float. But that's okay. Whenever we fill it up, we can get to that and fix it. So I am going to take one more plant from another tank. It's going to be Hydrocotyle tripartita. Let me show you. It's this plant right here, right underneath the rainbow fish. And I'm just going to take some trimmings from it, and then we can weave it into the other plants. This little handful is going to be more than enough to get started. To plant this stuff, all I'm going to do is just kind of weave it into the top of the other plants. And maybe a little bit along the wood. This stuff creeps all over the place and is just going to go wherever it wants. It's going to add a really nice texture to the rest of the aquarium. Okay, so I think we've really achieved the look that I was going for here. 2 islands, beautiful, lots of java fern, bolbitus. It's going to be super exciting to see all of this grow in. All right, so now it's time to get this thing full of water. And I'm going to show you guys a little trick that I learned recently that makes filling a tank like this way easier. So I've got this bucket set up here, and then I've got a little paper towel set up right inside the tank. And then I've got this water pump that I got on Amazon probably a year ago and I haven't really had a use for. So I'm just putting this thing inside the bucket and I'm just going to drape this hose right over here. And I just have the paper towel in here just to diffuse the water a little bit so that it doesn't blast the sand all over the place. So now just fill it up with water. Yeah, it's nice, automated, easy. I've just got a jug on hand right here that I can run and fill up and then pour into this bucket as it gets lower. And then I can walk around the house, do other things, and not be tied to the tank while it fills. It's perfect. I love a little bit of automation. And if you're concerned about dechlorinated water going into the tank this way, for example, if there were fish in here, you could just add dechlorinator to the bucket or just add some to the tank as you're filling it. All right, so I'm gonna finish filling up the tank and then I'll get the filter started and I'll see if any of the plants decide to float up or if anything gets dislodged. And if it does, then I'll just go and fix it. And I think I'll check in with you guys first thing in the morning and we can see how the plants are doing. But stick around, that'll be like 5 seconds for you. All right, guys, so it is now the next day. And miraculously, none of the plants have floated up or moved around too much or anything like that. They're just kind of swaying gently in the flow, which I think is beautiful. I think we've really achieved something very simple to do, but beautiful. And as this grows in, the Java ferns will get bushier. The Hydrocotyle tripotida is going to just start snaking all over the wood and these islands. And as it grows, we can kind of guide it by twisting it around to the pieces of wood and that kind of thing. And yeah, I think with time, it's just going to get more and more beautiful. So I hope you see that this is something that you can easily do yourself. And these plants, this was roughly like $100 worth of plants. So not a massive part of the budget. I mean, it is expensive, but if you're getting into an aquarium like this, it's good to invest in plants if you want a planted tank. So you should put aside a decent amount of your budget for plants. As I'm looking at it, the only thing that I'm thinking is that it could use a few more epiphytes, honestly. I think I may or may not get some more Anubias for it. We'll see. I think that some pieces of Anubias down in sort of the bottom could do some things like hide the roots here, fill out some of the areas a little bit more. Let me know what you think. Should I get more epiphytes? Maybe 2 or 3 pots of Anubias, something like that? That would add a different texture in the lower parts and hide a little bit more of that lower wood. But let me know in the comments if you think I should get more epiphytes. So the next part of this is really just waiting, letting it grow in, and getting the tank cycled. So to start cycling a tank, we have to do a couple of different things. The first thing is to condition the water. And I did add a little bit of this last night. It's really just a couple drops, a couple mil out of this bottle. And this is Seachem Prime. It's a concentrated conditioner for marine and freshwater. So it removes chlorine and chloramine, which are in tap water. Well, some tap water, not all tap water, but it's good to be safe. And then it can also detoxify ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate in higher quantities. So I added a little bit of this just to get this water nice and conditioned for the fish that we'll add eventually. So that's step 1. Step 2 is going to be to add some beneficial bacteria. And I'm going with Seachem Stability. This is just what is sold locally and I can get my hands on the easiest. But there are plenty of other products just like this that'll do the same thing. So on startup, for this, it says to use 1 capful for each 20 gallons. So that's approximately what this is. So I'm going to add 1 cap. And I like to just pour it kind of directly into the flow. And so that'll start seeding everything here, and the filter especially, with beneficial bacteria. And I'm going to add this daily for the next 7 days. And you can add fish at this point now that there's beneficial bacteria in here. But that is called a fish in cycle, and it's a little bit more complicated. You really have to pay close attention to the fish and the parameters of the tank. I recommend that you wait at least a week and dose beneficial bacteria in the meantime, and then continue to do so once you add fish. This will just start those kind of background levels of bacteria breeding. And in this aquarium, They'll start breeding on the rocks and that kind of thing as well, as the lava rock is so porous. So more surface area means more places for beneficial bacteria to breed. And I'm also going to add a little bit of fertilizer to the tank, because all of these plants are drawing their nutrients out of the water column, right? And there's no nutrients in the substrate that would leach into the rest of the aquarium. So they are going to benefit a lot from a liquid fertilizer. So I have this UNS plant food min, which I got specifically for Java ferns in my other nature aquarium. And this stuff is derived from potassium sulfate in the first ingredient there. That potassium is what really helps the Java ferns, and it's going to help them maintain this bright green color. If you have Java ferns and they start getting those little black spots, that means that they have a potassium deficiency. And for this fertilizer, it recommends that you do 1 pump for every 5 gallons every other day with weekly water changes. So I'm just going to go for 4 pumps right now for 20 gallons. And just because there are so many epiphytes in here right now, and I want them to have a strong start, I'm also going to add just a small amount of C-Chem Flourish. So that's all the fertilizer added and the water conditioned and beneficial bacteria started. But I think I am going to add one more thing, because this is very green right now, and I think I want to get some floating plants in. I have some red root floaters that I think are going to make this look awesome. I'm just going to add them straight into the top of the tank like this. I'm hoping that they'll kind of stay in this area directly underneath the light, because under a high light, these will really have a nice color. And the higher light that they get, the more red that they will go. So I'll add those and maybe some others. Go with a little handful of salvinia as well. So why not? I'll add just a little bit of frog bit as well. I think floating plants are going to look really nice in here. So when you're buying floating plants, my advice is to not buy a lot. You don't need a whole bunch of pots of floating plants because they multiply rapidly. I've only ever bought 1 pot of any of the types of floating plants that I have in my studio, and they just keep on going. I have more than I could ever need at this point. So don't waste your money on a whole lot of floating plants. Give it time and this whole surface is going to be covered. If you're looking at this layout here and you're thinking, wow, that could really use some stems in the background. It would look really cool with a curtain of some red stems in the background or something like that. If you come this far into following a build like this and you think, wow, I could really use some stems, but the foreground is all sand, well, there is a product that can help you out. And that is root tabs. But they're basically just a small tab that all you do is just take some tweezers and just put it down into your substrate at the base of stem plates. So what you can do is just plant as many stems as you want, and then just place a bunch of root tabs near where they're planted. And this will add a whole bunch of nutrients right near their roots that they can use to grow. So if you get this far and you want to do that, root tabs is what I recommend. All right, so everything is set and ready to just start growing. And now we just play the waiting game. I think I'm gonna let everything settle for probably about a week, and then we can come back, see how the plants are doing, and probably add our first fish. And I think it is going to be a group of Rasphoras that I have in another tank. And they're really gonna make this pop as well because they have a nice orange color with a little black stripe, and seeing them buzz around in here is gonna be really cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Maybe this inspired you to do something like this yourself. If it did, let me know what you're doing in the comments, and I'd love to see your guys' setups as well. But next time I see you, we'll check in with the tank and we'll add some fish. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully this inspired you to do something similar. Maybe you learned something. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe and leave me a comment. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.